这个花叫什么？
What's the name of this flower?
给桑花。
It's a type of
这个
daisy.
不知道。给桑来都是。这全部做的你们讲我做的，我们全部那边的把个大量传多什么都，东巴对这讲了，给小子儿，像是我在你这公司，叫我自己上了一来嘛。这没本做上了，所有的工具都办不了，新级了，工具都办不了，新级了，工具都办不了，新级。无上甚深微妙法，被强人千难遭遇，无尽强人得水，愿记住了这誓言，为度化一切众生，劝大家发无上的菩提心。
Propagating Khenpo Sodargye Nyotsang Digyangde Sangyesan Jipa number Kopa Jishawa Tagba Chimbumdo Workut Pagba Tarva Khenpo Sodargye Nyotsangdi Digyangde Sangyes Jipar number Kopa Jishawa Tagba Chimbumdo Sangye Nam Shangchip Sanhua Tamchala Shamsarlo Darkudakatupa Tirchigna Jondan de Yarbuka Ki Chongchir Chimbo na Gerlunga Gindan Gerlunga Gindan Chimbo Yatchadam Shanchip Sanhui Gindan Samcha Chichtongdang Tavchigda Jigde Deda Ganjar Tiachika Togba Jiba Tamchil Yonsab Jarva Zibjitang Huarki Wang Shigdang Damba Devjang Shagbala Sanwiton Tapti Kurwa Sangdi Jijang Yonsa Tabrab Shepa Sangdi Jivshawa Lanjin Jiba Sangdi Namji Shinji Labji Shin Labji Number Kopa Chujir Desnodov Zhongjiang Styopi Shir Tagba Chimbu Mdo Zongsen Zhenjiang Senki Zhe Chokpchir Chuji Mzhigzha Qinbu Zhokba 呀，今天讲这么多。
Well, we'll just study that much today.
今天就开始我们讲
Today we'll begin our class, a series of class
大同放光忏悔灭罪
on the Sutra of Great Liberation, the Sutra of eliminating misconduct by means of confession and contrition, increasing towards great liberation and a way to attain Buddhahood. That's the title of this
前一
sutra.
段时间才决定下来的。
Well, I just recently made this choice of made this decision of giving teaching on this sutra. I've been wanting to give the teachings,
能不能唱书呢，也不是特别清楚，
but I
所
wasn't
以呢
sure
一直没有
if
给大家
the
说。
condition is quite the conditions are mature to give teachings on this. But a few days ago,
确定完了以后才给大家
after
宣
we
布的。
made such
这个原因是
decision,
什么呢？ 如果人太多了，就这样的话呢，就
the
各方面现
announcement
在
on
不方便。所以呢，
teaching
就是
on
只有
this
我
sutra.
们极少数人。
Because
就
if
是
I were to tell too many people, it would be rather a little bit difficult. It might
还
bring
有一
some
个目的的话
inconvenience.
呢，
And another
因为这个经呢，就也是很深深
is
的。
that in fact the
这个
sutra
经
is
中呢，
quite
就是
profound.
越少越好。
It would be the
如果
best
太
if
多
we
了，
have
现
just
在
a
的人
little
很
bit
复
of
杂，
audience
因为
and
有
not
些是
too
可能
many
有信心
audience.
的，有
That
些是
would
没
be
有
good.
信心的，有
Because
些
there are
是
people who have faith and there are
就
people who
为了
don't.
各种目的而这个
And maybe they're listening to this teaching
而
for
那个听闻
their
的。
personal
所以呢，
agenda,
前
with a
两天
personal
我也讲
agenda.
了，就是除了我们平时的听课的这少数人以外呢，
So
尽量的不要
I'm only giving
给
teachings
其他人
to
通知
the ones who
就
only
你们也比
have
较
been
听
listening
话
to my teachings and not
也还
really
可以，就是比较满
making
意。
big promotions
就人的
on
这
my
个都
classes.
不少
And I really feel quite content that, in fact, I don't have too many or too little. It's not good to have too many or too little, right? So I think the number of audience is quite appropriate at this point. To listen to the Sutra of Great Liberation, I don't have too many prerequisites. My only prerequisite is that you have to become a true Buddhist. Even for those of you who can't take the vow to become true Buddhist, I really wish that at least, my least prerequisite is that you have to have respect towards the three jewels and shouldn't slander the three jewels at any point. On the first day of giving classes, of a series of classes, usually there are more people attending that first class because there are people who's attending that class just out of curiosity, and then after a while they will give up. Maybe just like there are people who are curious about what physics is or chemistry is, and then they would attend the first class to just find out what it is. The mundane classes, such as biology and history and so forth, if you were to listen to one class, listen to the first class, you probably won't be able to understand the whole knowledge, the whole part of that knowledge at all. So similarly, if you only listen to the first class of the Dharma, you probably just plant a virtuous seed in your mind stream. And other than that, there's really not much of benefit to you. Therefore, I really encourage all of you to listen to the whole series of the class. You should begin the first class and then also attend the whole series of it and end on the last class. Because if you don't attend the whole series of class, it also plants the kind of inauspicious seed on you as well, that you might interrupt from your listening of the Dharma later on. The classes only last for about an hour and a half. I understand an hour and a half might be too much to ask for. You have to be very diligent for this period of time. But you're listening, you're sitting, and you can try your best to contemplate. And as long as you don't fall asleep, you can even close your eyes. And you don't play with cell phone, because if you were to play cell phone, if you were to doze off and so forth, that would influence others, would create negative influence around other people. So those are usually the kind of requirements for the mundane world, for the worldly classes. The teacher would require you not to doze off, not to play cell phones and so forth. And then for me, I would have a slightly higher requirement, because I have to put lots of effort into giving the class. I have to look into the Chinese version, the Tibetan version. I have to make lots of preparation before I give them a class. If you were to be in my place, you can try to put yourself in my shoes and think about if you will be in great stress to give classes to a great number of audience. If you don't give classes, if you don't listen to the classes, you can have all kinds of excuses. I have to go out tomorrow, I have other things to do, I'm ill, I have headache, footache, I have the high altitude sickness and so forth. And I can also use those excuses as well. I can play with cell phones as well, but contemplating on the preciousness of the human body, to attain such a human body in this life, I think I better use this body and do more meaningful things. Otherwise, I can have all kinds of excuses. I have lots of things to take care of. I also am not very healthy. I have lots of illness from different parts of my body. So I have all different kinds of excuses to tell as well. There's some kind of echo right now, isn't it?
我想我们这个在座的各位的话呢，就是也应该有了开头以后呢。
So I will try my best to persevere, and I would encourage all of you to persevere as well. So I hope that you're not here to. So I hope that you're not here to play. You're not here to listen to this class with other kinds of agendas, other kinds of hidden agendas. A group of Buddhists, it's not that you don't have time, but you use all kinds of excuses to spend your time in a rather lazy fashion. And you would spend your time meaninglessly. And when it comes to creating negative karma, to be lazy and to squander your time in leisure, then lots of people would have lots of energy and have no excuses in doing those kind of actions. But when it comes to virtuous actions, such as listening to the Dharma, all kinds of excuses would arise in our mind, such as I'm busy, I have lots of chores, I have lots of work to do, and my health is not good. That is because you have lots of negative habitual patterns, and if you were to use those excuses and not to practice virtuous deeds, that could only increase your negative habitual patterns. I'm not sure if I'll be able. I'm not sure how much I'll be able to teach on this sutra. I will give teaching on this week, on the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and next week the time may change. I hope that people could listen to this class, attend this class properly and thoroughly. If you are really, really busy, at least I encourage you to listen to the oral transmission of Tibetan language at the very beginning of the class. This oral transmission I have is excellent. Because I have received the oral transmission from Tokudisha, and there are the few versions of it I've received from various masters, so I've received all the transmissions. Therefore, the staff member over here, the volunteers, I really encourage all of you to spare the time to listen to the oral transmission. To listen to this sutra would benefit you greatly. Just think about that if other people would chant this sutra for you for 49 days, and then you can attain liberation. Don't mention about you yourself listening to this sutra yourself. Your corpse listening to the sutra for 49 days is beneficial. It could help you and lead you on the path of enlightenment, and think about the benefit about listening to this sutra and studying this sutra yourself. That kind of merit is immeasurable. This kind of sutra, in fact, all kinds of virtuous deeds, we should accumulate all kinds of virtuous deeds for the provision of this lifetime and next lifetimes. Look at all the worldly wealth, the fame and wealth and so forth. Those really don't have any intrinsic meaning. Those could be lost at any moment. Therefore, the most important thing to do is really to study, to practice virtuous deeds at this point. To engage yourself in a class really do require lots of efforts. You should not speak, you should not do other things and get distracted while you're listening to a class. You have to sit there and you have to make sure that your body, speech, and mind are all in the proper place to listen to a class, to attend that class. To have the 100 days of oral transmissions to have the 100 days of oral transmissions. Nowadays, there are people who would sit properly and hold their postures properly for 100 days, such as listening to the oral transmission of the Tripitaka and so forth. If you were to listen to some extensive oral transmissions, it takes 30 days, 20 days, and so forth. But there are lots of people who have such kind of diligence to receive the oral transmissions in such a way. If you don't listen to the class and I don't give teachings, and if we can attain liberation in such a way, and that would be great. We can chat, we can play, and so forth. Wouldn't that be great? But that is not possible. Anyhow, we can use this way we can listen to the sutra and study, and with such kind of a way we can increase our merit and gain benefits. To give the teachings on the Sutra of Great Liberation, I myself am very happy. I also wish that people who are attending this class, you can listen and study the sutra thoroughly, and may the protectors, the worldly protectors and the Dharma protectors protect us, so that we can finish this sutra from the beginning to the end. Because nowadays there are so many causes and conditions that lead to lots of uncertainties, and we can't be very sure about what's going to happen tomorrow. So it's not very easy for us, but with the protections from the protectors, it will be much easier. I myself am very happy this time. In this year, that is a very special year for all of us, I was able to finish giving the teaching on the Kshitigarbha Sutra, and I really hope that this time our audience could finish listening and studying the Sutra of Great Liberation. The oral transmission that I have is very rare. And for people who know this sutra, you probably know that this sutra is very well known and really popular in Tibet. But I'm not sure how many people can study it. This time, since we're studying it, I really hope that we can generate this profound feeling that the Sutra of Great Liberation is of great importance, is of great merit. And I hope that we can all generate an aspiration. That is, let us propagate the teaching, let us propagate the Sutra of Great Liberation so that it can be as popular as the Heart Sutra, as the Diamond Sutra, Lotus Sutra, and so forth. We have to propagate it. May you be a lay practitioner or a monastic. Even if you can give one teaching of one stanza of the Sutra of Great Liberation to the others, it would be of great benefit. So let us make such aspiration wholeheartedly today. Whenever there's such opportunity arises, it may be this lifetime, maybe the next lifetime, I will definitely propagate the teachings of the Sutra of Great Liberation. So on the first day of giving this teaching, let us generate such kind of aspiration that I will definitely propagate this teaching to innumerable numbers of beings in different worlds, in different languages, and in different regions, and so forth. Let it be in Europe, in different countries in America, and in different places. Even if you don't have opportunity to give teachings on it, you can go to different places. You can go to remote villages. You can go to remote homes and remote countries that doesn't have Dharma, and just chant the sutra once over there on that land. And with that kind of practice, simply by chanting the sutra, it is indeed very meaningful because it would promote the virtue over there in that area. I myself made connection to the Sutra of Great Liberation since a very young age. Before I was 10 years old, I had a neighbor. When I was still hurting, that is. And my neighbor had a large prayer wheel, and inside his prayer wheel, it was the Sutra of Great Liberation. And that's my first contact with this sutra. And the second experience of this sutra was that my father took me to a friend of his who lives in the farming area, and we were in the herding area, so it was about 20 to 30 kilometers away. The herders and farmers usually would trade. The herders would give the farmers such as ghee and milk tea and so forth, and then the farmers would gift back some tsampa and some potatoes. And all kinds of those agriculture products. For such kind of mutual benefit, my father usually would take lots of those dairy products to the farmers and exchange different agriculture products. When I was young, I went to this area, and his name is Sandang Ganglo. I think I told his stories before. He's very kind old man, and his family members was very nice to him as well. He would chant the Sutra of Great Liberation from dawn to sunset. Sometimes whenever we visit the farmer's area, we would visit him and we would stay with him. And he would tell us the merit of Sutra of Great Liberation. He would tell me me that you should chant this sutra, you should practice on this sutra. He said, this is such a wonderful sutra. I often remember him. I remember whenever I visit him, when I was in the primary school or when I was in the junior high school and even the teacher's college, he would chant the sutra every day. And whenever I visit him, he would be doing that.
这个呢，对我来讲就是后来就是这个我这个到了学院以后就是得到了一个32课的
he definitely made an example for me when I first came to Larunga.
这个经就是我就自己念一遍，就那个时候我还是已经出家了。
I also would learn from him and would chant the Sutra of Great Liberation.
非常殊胜的。
I chant the names of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the sutra. Before my ordination, I was quite naughty, so I didn't really listen to him. But after I got ordained, I did. He was a lay practitioner, very ordinary. But I heard that his death was very extraordinary, lots of auspicious signs. So sometimes I contemplate to myself, the lay practitioners or monastics who would give teachings, I think we should all create an influence to the children, to the younger generation. I know that children could be very naughty and really noisy, and if you were to bring them to a Dharma assembly, they may make lots of excessive noise. But I still encourage them to come to Dharma assemblies. This year we don't really have any large gatherings because of the pandemic. But whenever there is a Dharma assembly or any kinds of virtuous gatherings, you should definitely take your children. In this way, they would receive blessings, they would get positive influence. I personally think that old lay practitioner gave me blessings simply by witnessing how he practiced day after day, how he has this, how he brings this peace and tranquility to me just naturally by being in his presence. I was of great influence. So that's my personal story to the connection of the Sutra of Great Liberation. Now let's get into the actual sutra. First of all, I would like to talk a bit about the dependent arising, or the beginning, the origin of this sutra. There are different languages written or translated of the sutra. The Chinese, the Tibetan, and Japanese, but not in English or French. I have never heard of that yet, at least. But the Chinese version is not as famous, not as popular. The Chinese translation do not have a distinct or a very accurate timing of when it's been translated. And the name of the translator was not recorded. But according to different history records, it was roughly around the South and the North dynasty. And mainly that's because of the discovery of the Dunhuang version, Dunhuang copy of this book, of this text, back in around 1900. So, among the treasures discovered in Dunhuang, this was one of the copies. But in the Dunhuang version, there's only a fragment of the Sutra of Great Liberation. And this fragment dated around the 6th century. And it is already translated into Chinese. According to that version, it says that 16th century. According to that text, it says that there was once a widow who dedicated to translate or transcribe this teaching, this sutra, to rededicate the merit to her husband in year 1590. Lots of the recitation, lots of the confession liturgies were collected around the Chengwen Emperor. Along with the Lotus Sutra and the Golden Array Sutra, so with the Sutra of Great Liberation, so there are a collection collected by that emperor. That's around 500 AD. And then later around that year, around that time, it's translated into Chinese. Now we can find some fragments of the sutra in the Dunhuang, from the Dunhuang grottos. The related documentaries and documents and fragments and records related to this sutra are about 20. There are about 21 of them. And only about over half of them can be read clearly or relatively clearly. In the Yonghua Lama Temple in Beijing, there's the copies of the Tibetan version and the Chinese version, as well as the Japanese version or Japanese translation of the Dunhuang version. And some lamas over there made comparisons of the three versions. So today we then are using this particular version that's edited. This version is already included in the Tripitaka. But in this version, there are some that's still missing. So this version is collected in the Beijing, in the Chinese Tripitaka. And we're using this as the text. This time, I really appreciate how fast you take your actions and you printed this book. There are different colors of the covers, the red, yellow, and all different colors, so you can get different texts and then you can send it to your relatives and friends. It's not necessary to get all of them. It's not necessary to get all the colors. I initially thought that it would be useful for you to make comparisons with different versions. Anyhow, this is the version that we're using this time to study it. What I noticed, though, is that we have more and more books. of course, is wonderful. If we were to have more worldly wealth, then those kind of worldly wealth would burden us. And just as Patrul Rinpoche, who said that if you were to have 1 box of tea, then you have one box of tea worth of suffering. And if you were to have 1 horse, then you would have 1 horse worth of suffering. So nowadays, if you have 1 iPad, you would have 1 iPad worth of suffering, and 1 iPhone worth of suffering, and 1 car worth of suffering, and so forth.
这样的就是，所以我刚才讲呢，就是我们这次只是用的这个版本的话呢，就是他们当时呢
Anyhow, this time,
就做出来一个对藏文和就是对这个敦煌和这些呢，就是也做了一些比较。
We made lots of comparisons between the Dunhuang version, the Tripitaka version, and the Tibetan version. So there are about 3,000 words that was not found in some of the versions that's missing. And then the Beijing version,
就是方山记呢，就是有北京就是有一个寺院，就叫做是
then in Beijing there's Fangshan Monastery.
就是这个有一个山叫做凤山，然后这里面有石窟啊，就是有
Around Mount Fangshan in Beijing, there's a rock cave, and it's also grottos where the monks hid the carvings and sutras. There are about 9 grottos, and out of the 8th grotto, they found this version of the Sutra of Great Liberation. And they found some of the missing ones. Part of that sutra was included in the second half of Amitabha Sutra, but that part belongs to the Sutra of Great Liberation. This time I'm using the Dunhuang's fragmented version and the Tibetan version, but sometimes it's necessary to use the other versions to fill up some of the empty spaces. And maybe we should come up, or maybe we should think about a version that maybe we can think of an edited version, or a version with different additions and footnotes. We definitely need an edited version because we need a good version so that we can chant it and practice on it. There's other versions where when people made changes or made additions, maybe they also made some mistakes. So for those of you who have the Tripitaka, the Chinese Tripitaka, you can make comparisons, or you can read into the Fangshan version, the Fangshan Grotto version. And that grotto is fully open between 2015, from 2015. And you can look up this version online. There are pictures of it. So that's what I want to tell you.
就是方山事迹的话，那就是确实是很有意义。就是说是当时是应该大概隋朝的时候吧，就是隋朝的时候。
Share this story about the Fangshan Grotto.
就是有一些皇帝呢，就是把这个什么
Around the Sui Dynasty, there were emperors who started to destroy Buddhism. They had this anti-Buddhist persecution, and then they started destroying the stupas and sutras and forced lots of the monastic to derobe. And then some monks, in order to protect the sutras, they would try to carve the sutras onto the rocks and granites so that they can be preserved for future generations. And then that kind of tradition passed down to their disciples. There's this particular there's this particular monk who continued, his name's Dao Xu, and he continued to collect the sutras and carved rocks, about 1,120 sutras onto collected 1,120 sutras, as well as carved 10,400 rocks. There are people who supported this kind of carving. There are emperors who supported this kind of carving of the sutra, and there are emperors who didn't. So we can see from the history, there are people who supported the Dharma and who didn't. The grotto is still under research and not open currently, but you can find the pictures online. We're now looking at the pictures. It's quite important to chisel those sutras on the rocks. Nowadays, if we were to only save documents on the computer, on hard drives, it's rather quite risky. Nowadays, we have this, if we were to have this technological war, all this digital information could be destroyed within 1 second. But in the ancient time, people would chisel those important information onto rocks. Or in Digger, we have those carved boards to print books. Initially, the boards are not used to reprint shastras. There are different types of paper. There's the Tibetan paper and the Chinese version paper. The Tibetan paper board printed Tripitaka costs about tens of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of RMB nowadays. But during my time, I only need to spend a few thousand. And there are many versions as well, the Lhasa version, the Digger version, the Beijing version. So many versions are available. Sometimes in order to protect the teaching, protect the Buddhism teaching, it is important to protect the language. It is definitely one way to keep our information of the Dharma teachings online. But chiseling on rocks is also another way of preserving the teaching. Look at the sutras that we can receive nowadays. Though there are some words missing and some words that's already blurry on the rocks, but mainly we receive these teachings because they were chiseled on rocks. Dunhuang Grotto has such a great value. The treasures that's buried, that's hid over there, provided lots of research values. We can see on the pictures there are lots of words that's very blurry and we cannot really see what's going on over there and what it is.
这个韩文方面的啊，就是讲一下。
This is
然后
the
我想
Chinese
再
version.
简单介绍一下这个藏文啊，就是藏文
In
的
terms
话，我
of the
前两
Tibetan
天说
version.
过，可能那个藏文的这个
A few days ago,
三大解脱经，就是我们这个
I
经
said
典
that
的话呢，
this
也许是
sutra,
可能汉
the
地这个
Sutra
过
of
来
Great
的，就以前有
Liberation,
这样的说法。
could
然后我们这
be
个
translated
藏文
from
大藏经
Chinese
的这个
language.
最后的话呢，说这个含义就是，然后后面就是
At
多
the
少
end
多
of
少
it,
多少
it
卷，
says
就是
that
但是这个
it
含义
is
呢是汉地译过来的呢，就是汉语有多
it
少
says
多少
that
卷的，不是很清楚的。
Chinese translate. So you don't really know if it's translated from Chinese language or translated into Chinese after. After looking through lots of papers and documents and records,
就特别的重视。那么就大概是在这个19世纪吧，就是大概是在19世纪
I found that around 19th century.
就是在别的一些，就是包括现在这个一些这个蒙古的那个一些这个
In
图书馆
Mongolia,
正常的
in
有什
the
么呢？
Mongolian libraries, they still have
这个圣大解脱
this
经
sutra
七宝，就是银子
stored
金子
in their
双
library,
骨
and
还有这
that
个
version
玛纳
is
宋
written
氏
with the
策曲
seven
就这样的。
with the
那
seven
么
jewels,
这个是以前
with the
是怎
seven
么重
treasures
视的，
of
就是我们也
Buddhism,
可以
such
看一
as
下。
coral, gold, silver, pearl. Now let's take a look at that one.
每一页都是用那个
Each page
不同颜色的这个
is
这样的。
written
那么
by
这个
different
呢，就是
colors.
是这个金子组成的。
This
就是
one
这个
is made by
这个
gold.
是在哪里呢？是这个德国的
And this one
就是巴
is
伐利亚这个
kept
图书馆
in
巴伐利亚助理图书馆。
National
那么
Museum,
这个是
in
黄
the
金
Bavarian
制
National
作的，大
Museum
概是可
in
能
Germany.
就哪一个世纪不是很清楚的，但是
Not
这个
sure
我刚才给
when
大家
this
看的
one
那
is
个
from.
就是
Not sure when this
金
sutra
字
is
书写的这个经
copied.
的后面的话呢，
But at the end
这
of
个
the
译本
sutra,
呢，就是这个译者呢，就是比较清楚啊，就是这
it
个后面的话呢，
states
就
the
是他的这个
translator.
译者就是就比较清楚，就是所以应该是这个圣大解脱经呢，在藏历的什么呢？是这个乾隆时期。翻译的
Therefore, we
乾
can
隆时
see
期翻
that
译的。
this
那翻译的译
particular
者的名字
version
呢
of the
就是叫做
this
是
particular
印
Tibetan
度的这
version
个
was
班智达兹
translated
那么
during
扎
the
就是很多
early
迁移的都是兹那
propagation
么扎
time.
的，还有那个藏地的这个罗扎瓦仪式的话呢，就一系队。就是一系队，僧人一系队。我们汉地
One
经
of
呢
the
叫知
translator
君，是那个
Lotsawa Yishide.
知君，就是也叫一系队的话呢，他是持中得正就持中得正的这个七大仪式之一，就是当时
One of
不
the
是他开了
seven
那个
great Lotsawas
七个
of
就是大
Chuzon
的那
Ditsen.
个仪场嘛，就是仪场当中的话呢，每一个
At
非
that
常
time, there
伟大
were
的那些
great
仪式呢，就是
translation
做他们的
centers,
组长来就是进行这
and
个翻
out
译。
of those
那么
translation
我刚
centers,
才
there
说
are
的这个
different
德
groups,
国的
and
就是也就是说这个
and there are
就是
supervisors
什么
for
这个
each group. So
就
he's
是
one
这
of
个
them.
巴伐利亚图书馆里面
In
的
the
话呢，
Bavarian
就是后
National
面有
Museum,
非常明显的这个印度的
this
班智达
particular
藏地
copy
的这个什么
has
就
this
是这个仪
footnote
式
at the
是
very
翻译的
end.
就是属于乾隆时期的。那这样的话，持中得
It
正时代
included
的
the
话
name
呢，应
of
该是这
Yishide
个第8世纪
Lotsawa.
就8世
And
纪。
that's
所以
when
所
we
以
can see that it's
很有可
translated
能的话呢，就是这个圣大解
into
脱经的
Tibetan
藏文呢，
language
就是
around the
不是
8th
从汉地
century.
引出去的，
So
应
for
该
that
是这
reason,
个
we
藏
can
地本身
see
在乾隆时期的时候呢会有的，
the
就
Tibetan
乾隆时期的
version
时候
was
会有的。
probably not
因为我也
translated
对照了
from
就是现
Chinese
在大
language
藏经里面的这个
because it was
这个
around
圣大
the
解脱
early
经和刚才
propagation
那个德国图书馆
time
的
of the Dharma.
这个圣大解脱经这两个呢就是进行比较的时候，
When I
我没
compare
有
the
全
two
部对，
versions,
但是
I haven't
前面的一
finished
部分
comparing
和
the
中间
whole
的一部分，
text.
后面的一部分
I compared the
对
first
照
and
的
the
时候
last
呢
part,
一模一样的。所以呢
and they are
就这
exactly
个
the same.
我们可以就是知道是它是应该是在8世纪的时候，藏地呢就是应该有翻译的。
It was
可能今天
around
的课
the
就是
8th
也许有点
century.
枯燥，
There
就是
were
我们不是
already
学术的人
translations.
就觉得是在讲什么就是实际不实际。
People
但
may
这个还
wonder
是
why am
很
I
重要的。
talking
我为
about
什
the
么这么
time,
讲
the
呢？因
history,
为
and
汉地
this
以前
century
一
and
段
that
时间就是
century.
包
In
括当
fact,
时
this
那
kind
个
of timeline is quite
道宣
important.
道宣女士的话呢，就是
During
他们
Master Daoxuan's
说是这
time,
个
he said that he posed the question whether this sutra should be considered as the apocryphal sutra. There are lots of people who had doubts about the Mahayana sutras. But there are times that's because of the audience do not have such kind of a capacity to study and listen to the Mahayana teaching. Therefore, if there are people who consider this is an apocryphal sutra, you should point it out that at the copy that is preserved at the Bavarian National Museum, at the end of it, it stated the translator. It has the name of the translator. According to the Tibetan version, you can see that the importance of this sutra started to take in place around the 6th century. People would use this sutra to chant to the deceased ones so that they may gain liberation. Nowadays, I notice that people have such kind of tendency. The sutras that they feel, there are people who would say that this sutra is not a real sutra, that sutra is fake. They have this kind of tendency to come to conclusions. The Sutra of Great Liberation was later propagated to Japan, and they placed a great importance to this sutra. Monk Kukai practiced on this sutra as well, and there was a very specific history on the propagation of this teaching. Around the 16th century, the Mongolian version was translated from the Tibetan version, because at that time the emperor placed great importance on this particular sutra. And that translation is also included in the Tripitaka as well. So with the different languages, let it be Mongolian, Japanese, also it is the ancient Chinese version. And the Chinese version, Tibetan version, especially in Tibet, we have this tradition of chanting this sutra for 49 days after people die. So from this tradition, we can see that in mainland area, they probably also have this kind of tradition of chanting the Sutra of Great Liberation after death as well. And looking through history, we can come to a conclusion that people definitely placed a great importance on this sutra throughout history. If you have time to look into the fragment version of the Dunhuang grotto discovery, you can look into it. I know that there are people who have lots of interest to chant Amitabha mantra and different mantras, and there are people who are more interested in the scholarly aspect of it. And that's also very important. You can't be too extreme on one side. You can't just chant Namo Amitabha all the time and completely abandon research and study. Nowadays, we definitely need research and studies, because that's how people's mind work nowadays. If we have time, we need to dispel the doubts and the arguments and debates about the questionable areas, so that definitely needs lots of the scholarly study. You can't only have the extreme on the practice nor the scholarly studies. Whatever teachings, whatever studies you engage in, you have to dispel all the doubts in that particular study. Whenever I give teachings on certain sutras or shastras, I have to read through a lot of books. I have to look through the different arguments and different doubts and debates and questions among people, and then read about its history and read about its cause and effect and its reasoning and results. Are there any conflicts or doubts about this teaching, about this sutra? So I have to read a lot. Whatever I study, I would definitely read into those kind of information. Of course, that is if I have time and when I have time. It is very interesting and definitely very meaningful. So we have to study in such a way, and that would be very beneficial. So after this class, you should know how this sutra is in China mainland, in Tibet, in Japan, in different areas of the world. In Tibet, we definitely have lots of importance of this sutra. And now we should propagate this sutra to the other areas. The audience sitting here today, you may look very ordinary, not too extraordinary, but if you were to make the aspiration, or if you were to propagate the Sutra of Great Liberation, you will be an extraordinary person. So now let's look at the title of the sutra. It's called The Sutra of Eliminating Misconduct and Means of Confession and Contrition, Increasing Toward Great Liberation and a Way to Attain Buddhahood. It's rather a very long title. The first one, it says it's a great, because it says it's a great penetration or great penetrating that could lead to great liberation. And then the next one, it says it's equanimity and expansive. Where it shows that, where it also talks about the way to attain Buddhahood. According to the King of Samadhi Sutra, it says that the characteristics of the Dharma are just as vast as space. It contains vast jewels, and therefore it is called vast. Dharma is definitely vast. It does not have any differentiation between the sentient beings and self. Over here, you can say that it is of the 10 directions, or it could mean boundless. It is immeasurable and boundless because all sentient beings can enjoy, can receive the profound teaching of the Dharma. Now, the function of the sutra is to eliminate misconduct and means of confession and contrition. In Jambudvipa, the sentient beings has all sorts of negative karmas, and the thoughts and actions are full of negative karmas, and they are constantly increasing. and it could get even more contagious to others if you were to have any of the negative karma, because your negative emotions could be contagious to the others, such as aggression and desire and so forth. There are, nowadays I notice lots of the monastics, they have lots of grasping towards the celebrities. I heard lots of the Tibetan jomos, the nuns, would go to the chanting place and ask the monastics to rededicate the merit to certain celebrity. I think that's a lot of grasping. Chandrakirti and many great masters had, we have lots of the admiration towards great masters who have the expansive view of non-duality and of emptiness. As monastics, if we have such solid grasping towards the worldly beings such as celebrity, I think we should feel rather quite embarrassed about ourselves. People nowadays who practice virtue are very limited. The number of them are limited, and the number of people who practice non-virtuous deeds are of many. I heard of a story. There was once a person who could not see anything because that person was born blind, and he suffers quite a bit because of that. Then he went to a Zen master because he was suffering so much. And the Zen master told him, you have to practice confession. Excuse me, he was not blind, he was rather half deaf. So he went to the Zen master, and then the Zen master told him to practice the confession liturgy, that is the Sutra of Great Liberation. Instead of saying the Sutra of Great Liberation, he said that you should use the fragrant water to purify yourself. And the fragrant water refers to the Sutra of Great Liberation. And after he confessed, then he could hear with the other ear. That's a story that's very well known in Japan. Through such kind of confession, one can purify the misdeeds. The next one, it says that it is adornment. It is an adornment that could reveal the truth of the Buddha. Therefore, it is adornment. It is also the sutra on it is also the sutra that increase towards the liberation. So this is the title of the sutra. And the second line says, homage to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. It is not included in the Chinese version, but included in the Tibetan version, because the King Chirabzangchen required that at the beginning of the Tripitaka, one has to pay homage to Manjushri or Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. According to Yeshide's version and this version, it's a little little bit different. So back in the 8th century, I'm not quite sure if it's the same, if it's still the same. I'm not quite so sure if this verse was included in the original sutra. It may not. In the Tibetan version, it does have this verse, this sentence at the beginning, the homage sentence. To the sutras, usually it is added by the Lotsawa, so we can understand it in such a way. Maybe a little more. Let's have a heard. Once the Buddha was residing in Rajagaha. That's have a heard. I've taught many times, so I'm not going to repeat what it means. At one time, the Buddha was residing at Rajagaha. That's the capital of the kingdom Magadha. At that time, there were 80,000 great bhikshus, along with 36,000 bodhisattvas. The great bhikshus over here, the great bhikshus, their great qualities were not stated later, but the bodhisattvas are, so you can see it from the later part. And it says that for those ones who can attain liberation in this lifetime, they have departed from all kinds of hindrances and fetters, such as anger, greed, sloth, doubt, and worry. They already obtained all kinds of freedom and power. They come forth to the Tathagata and asked him to give the teachings. So the bodhisattvas come forth to the Tathagata and ask the Buddha and use various skillful means to require the Tathagatas to turn the wheel of the Dharma, to give the teaching of skillful means. When the mundane beings ask the Buddha to give teachings, the Buddha may not teach, because there is not much of skillful means. But the bodhisattvas would come to the Tathagata, and with their skillful means, the Buddha would give teachings, such as Kshitigarbha Bodhisattva, that is requested by the various bodhisattvas. We can see that they use various skillful means to request the teaching from the Buddha, so we can understand it in such a way. And then it says the bodhisattvas can manifest or can see the Pure Land of the Pure Land of the Buddhas. The Buddha land or the Pure Land cannot be perceived by the mundane beings. But because of the bodhisattva's great power, then they were able to see the Buddha land. They were able to manifest such appearance or to show such a Buddha land, the purity of the Buddha land. According to the Dunhuang version, the wording is a little bit different, but the meaning is the same. At the end of, in fact, we should practice on to see the purity of the Buddha land. The Tathagata's activities are spontaneously accomplished. Rather than us, our activities are not spontaneously accomplished. We have to go through lots of troubles and difficulties. Even the great lamas and masters in their Dharma activities can be very difficult for you to accomplish. And not only you do not contribute to their activities, you might create difficulties for their activities. But the Buddhas, the Tathagatas' activities are spontaneously accomplished. And that kind of blessings and powers of the Bodhisattvas to show the purity of the Buddha land is because of the blessings and power of the Tathagatas. Because of the immeasurable blessings from the Buddhas, so that their activities and their practice can be accomplished. With the blessings of the three jewels, they were able to have such kind of freedom to accomplish their activities. Chanting the Buddha names or practicing the mantras, if you were to have great faith in Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, this is really great. If you were to know the power and merit of the Buddhas, that would be even better. According to the boundless merit samadhi of meditation on the Buddha Sutra, it says that anyone who calls my name and calls homage to Buddhas will obtain merits that are immeasurable and boundless. Many people would supplicate to the Buddha. Even if you just say Namo Buddha, if you say Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Medicine Buddha, and Namo Amitabha, and so on, then during your sleep, while you eat, you will always receive the blessings from the Buddhas, and it will be very meaningful and beneficial. Then it says that they are there to uphold and protect the treasure of the Dharma, as well as uphold the Mahayana teaching. And because they uphold and protect the Mahayana teachings, the Dharani, the Sutra, the Mahayana Shastras, and so on, because they protect and uphold the Mahayana teachings, they have great merit. I remember another story. There was once a monk who was very lazy. And he died after 2 or 3 days. He revived from death, and he wept after he revived from death. And people asked him, "What happened to you?" He said that he saw Avalokiteshvara, and the Bodhisattvas said to him, scolded him, saying that you have such lost practice. You do not practice diligently, but only because you've heard the name of the Sutra of Great Liberation, so you have great merit. And that is why your life has not fully ended yet. Therefore, now you have to go back to human realm and practice for another 12 years on the Mahayana Sutra, on the Mahayana teaching, and then you will be able to gain merit. Therefore, for lots of you, even if you can't understand the sutra fully, it would be of great benefit for you if you were to just sit there and listen. If you were just sitting there cross-legged and listen to the sutra, that could help you to gain liberation as well. According to the commentary on the chapter of the 10 abodes of Avatamsaka Sutra, it says that to teach beings as numerous as the sands of Ganges and to attain arhatship is far less supreme than to teach one person to abide in the Mahayana path. The last one, it says that they has the capacity to they have the power of lion's roar, and their sound is as loud, their Dharma sound is as loud as the thunder. Can you hear the thunder now? Have you heard of thunders lately? You don't care about nature at all. You only care about food, care about lunch, care about the dishes. So all these bodhisattvas, their lion's roar can be extended to the world of 10 directions. Just as the Sutra of Manjushri speaks the Supreme Ones and their merit, it says that the Buddha abides in the state of no self and preaches this teaching of no self like lion's roar that frightens all Tirtikas and terrifies all Maras. So this kind of lion's roar can frighten all the non-Buddhists and it terrifies all Maras because his enlightenment of no self. And that is because he abides in the state of no self. No other Tirtikas can threaten him at all. That's the power of such teaching. Next time we'll continue with the merits of the great Bodhisattvas. We'll stop here today.
Sonum doi tanche zebanya tomna nipe jana banje jirga nanchi ralon chubai chubum sonen joa juru